Welcome to Investing Confidential. Well, today's China Day. China's blowing up. It's all over the news. It's all over the internet. Those are the facts. But what's going to be the impact? Why should you, as a U.S. investor or any type of investor, care? And basically, my thing is not only should you care, this is so bad, and you really should listen to the rest of this video. So the financial markets and the media and investors have woken up to the China risk. Okay, but if you've been watching my videos, I've been talking about this risk for some time. I did say to you to sell that last big rally we had a few weeks ago when China was up on this supposed getting rid of the zero COVID. I mean, if you listened to my videos, you would have been informed about this, and no one would have been surprised. I've been saying this all along: zero COVID doesn't work. Okay, but first, let's look at the facts. Let's look at what we really know, what we don't know, and why is it important, and what should we do about it. As we said before, zero COVID is dumb. It's not effective. It's ridiculous. But the Chinese government had no choice because they have a credibility problem, and this whole credibility problem is now blowing up in their face. The current events that are going on today with the protests didn't just start with an apartment fire in the Urumqi district. This is a city in the northwest of China, about 3.5 million people. It's the capital of Xinjiang, which you probably know better as the Uyghurs Autonomous Region. Now, the Uyghurs are the people who are of Muslim faith that have been repressed by the Chinese government, the CCP, for quite some time. This is a hotbed. So obviously this apartment blowing up, catching fire and killing 10 people is a massive thing. And what people aren't talking about is the fact that when they had lockdowns there, and what the army did was they welded the doors shut. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. The army welded the doors shut so people could not get out of the apartment building. And obviously they did that because the whole city was on lockdown because of a couple of COVID cases. And this is a problem because as this information gets out and as it got out, you're seeing massive protests throughout the entire country. Now, again, to put this in perspective, if you watch my videos, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The biggest risk to China is not the United States. It's not Russia. It's not anybody else. It's their own people. And if you study Chinese history, you'll know that the government, the CCP, is more afraid of their own people than they are of the US or anybody else. So this is a major issue. I have some ideas on what the government's going to do, but I'll save that for a little bit later. So again, these lockdowns have been around since day one. Okay, since the first start of this virus started to appear in Wuhan. By the way, this happened in October 2019. Some perspective, I was in China in December 2019. I've been going to China for 25 years. I do have a pretty good perspective on it. So these lockdowns have been going on for quite some time. And for a while, the people were happy with it, right? Because the government told them propaganda that if you do what we tell you, you're not going to get COVID, you're not going to die. So they scared people. But obviously, over time, this became a pretty big problem. The state media, obviously everything is controlled by the government, has suppressed this. And entire districts, entire cities have been locked down over the last couple of years. And the U.S. press is just starting to pay attention to this now. But we talk about this. This is a nightmare. You've had, districts with, hundreds of thousands, millions of people locked down. And you've had, entire cities like Shanghai locked down, entire districts of Beijing locked down. And when I say locked down, okay, I'm going to show you what lockdown is. Okay, now you can see some footage. This is footage you may have seen before coming out of Twitter and other places. You see these barriers that people are knocking down. Okay, these barriers were put up by the CCP and the army to surround districts or entire cities. Okay, these are draconian, but this is the reality that the Chinese citizens have been going through. All right, these blockades. So so what happens is people have to test constantly. They have this app. Somebody tests positive, and boom, blockades go up overnight, literally overnight. to surround districts, surround cities, surround neighborhoods. You can't leave. You got to stay in your house. And if you keep violating it, like the people up in, like the Uyghurs did, they will, you know, weld your doors. They will weld your doors. Okay, shut. Okay, this is the reality of the CCP. This is the reality of what the army is doing in China. These apps, I talked about this before, but I'll say it again. The Chinese government has the ability to test somewhere north of 1 billion people per day. Okay, take that in, 1 billion people per day. They're not testing 1 billion, but they can test if they had to. They're testing millions of people per day. I have friends in Beijing that have been locked down or quarantined for quite some time. They have to test 3 times a week. And if you test, and if you don't test, you're going to get a knock at the door by the army the following day. Okay, the army right now is not anywhere else. It is in the streets of all the cities in China enforcing zero COVID mandates and quarantines and lockdowns. That's where the army is. That's why China can't do anything right now except for internally suppress these protests and make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do with all of these COVID tests. It's a mess, but as we talked about, COVID cases, as you can see here, they can't be stopped. They're through the roof. Okay, through the roof. And by the way, these numbers don't tell you anything because there is fake news coming out of China. And these numbers, whatever they are, they're probably 10 times. Yes, 10 times what they are. So, here we had, people were freaking out about, all of the people getting tested positive per day here in the U.S. China probably has 300,000 to 500,000, maybe more people testing positive per day because that's what COVID is. Okay, we're not going to go into COVID, but that's the reality. But let's talk about why this matters. Okay, why are stocks down today? And I'm just going to go back to James Carville. If you don't know what he was the advisor to Clinton many years ago, and he said something that kind of resonates. It's about the economy, stupid. Okay, it's about the economy. Why are stock markets down? The reactions are right. Okay, look at this. These COVID restrictions are now represent in geography over 60% of the Chinese GDP. This is one of the top 3 economies in the world. It is completely locked down. This was the fastest growing economy where everyone has massive amounts of investments. This thing's locked down, 60% of the GDP. Some other evidence. Look at the Chinese box office. The Chinese movie industry is huge. Here in the United States, they can't wait to put movies in China. They're massive. The box office is massive. Well, not anymore. Chinese aren't going to the movies. What does that tell you? That means the Chinese consumer has literally stopped buying. They're not buying anything. Okay, folks, they're not buying anything. So I don't care who you are. If you have exposure to China, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. You got big issues. Okay, and so what's that causing? That's causing capital outflows, as you can see here. These capital outflows have been happening for quite some time, but they're going to accelerate. What does that mean? That means Chinese people, rich Chinese people, are getting out as fast as they can. And this will accelerate. And they're not coming back, folks. They're going to get out and they're not coming back. So what is the Chinese government doing? Well, they're cutting reserve requirements, you can see here. They're trying to help the banks. They're desperate. These are draconian measures. Liquidity is an issue. They don't want the banks to go under. So they're cutting reserve requirements, trying to liquefy the banks. But it's not helping. Look at the Chinese currency versus the US dollar. It's fading fast. Okay, it's going to break the recent lows. That's going to happen sometime very soon. So what is it? What are all this? So people see all this crisis in China, and what's happening? The dollar, okay, which the dollar starting to move higher again off of its support. This is not good. This is a problem for the world. This is a problem for all financial markets. So just keep watching the dollar as the yuan, the Chinese currency, fades fast. People will be moving to the dollar, especially Chinese leaving the country. They're going to be moving to the dollar and gold, but most likely the dollar. So the dollar strength is going to be a big problem for all financial assets. But let's look at the problem in China, okay, is that, or the big problem, geopolitically speaking, is China is very dependent, okay, on their high-tech industry from chips from outside of China, from the U.S., Taiwan, etc. Why am I mentioning that? Well, this is really bad. if you were, let's say, one of the ones who didn't think China was going to do something with Taiwan anytime soon. As the rhetoric starts to flow, as you hear all these calls for, people divesting, Apple, etc., divesting out of China and divesting and Taiwan being in, you're going to see the rhetoric begin to rattle, the swords begin to rattle, because when you have social unrest, which is what China has, they have massive social unrest. The one way they think that other leaders like this have tried to quell the social unrest or try to get the people's mind off the social unrest is through some type of action, some type of military action. So I don't have any anecdotal evidence, but this is this could be very bad for Taiwan and a potential Taiwan invasion with these chips on the line. So just be aware. Now that happens, all bets are off and everything is going to go, as they say in the UK, pear-shaped. Okay, but again, how do you play this? What are you watching? Watch Apple. Apple is the canary in the coal mine. Apple has massive exposure. Apple's in the news. They have their, Foxconn plant. But again, people who have been watching my videos know that I've been talking about Apple for weeks and months. That Apple is the one to watch. Apple has massive downside here. Okay, not only do they assemble in China, but they sell into China. They don't want to tell you that, but they sell into China. They sell all over the world. And remember, the consumer around the world is very depressed. Not just the Chinese consumer, but the US consumer, EU consumer, very depressed. Demand for iPhones are going down. And this is interesting because Apple's going to play this game. They've already started playing the game in the press, saying, oh, we can't get you the premium phones. It might not be enough. And they're trying to get a feeding frenzy. Just like our friends in the real estate industry did, just like our friends in, not really friends, but the dirtbags in the car industry did. They try to make you believe that there's a shortage. This is Beanie Baby syndrome again. Do not run to buy an Apple phone because there's going to be plenty of Apple phones. Okay, don't believe this crap about there's no Apple phone. There's a million Apple phones, but this is, again, Apple's got a problem, and it's more of a not a supply problem, but they've got a demand problem. And this is what they're going to try to hide. Okay, and yes, they're going to try to hide it. Let's look at the canary in the coal mine. This is Tesla. Okay, one of your favorite stocks to trade. Obviously, you're a trader. You traded Tesla before. Look at their exposure to China. It's massive. Okay, not only manufacturing, which is big, but also demand-wise. So Tesla, it's on the lows. It's going lower. Okay, they have big problems in China. But it's not just Tesla. You've got Ford, you've got General Motors, also big exposure to China on both sides. You got Walmart. Look, Walmart sources most of their goods come out of China. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, because supply chains, manufacturing and all this other thing people in China have basically stopped working. They're not buying anything. So if you're a Walmart, you got a problem coming into Christmas. And also, for all you out there that obviously try to invest in any type of clean energy, China really drives the clean energy revolution. Okay, solar panels. China's the #1 manufacturer of solar panels out there. All of this is going to have major issues, cost-wise, inflation-wise, with what's going on in China today. The bottom line is, I'm going to just mention this. What is the Chinese government going to do? They're going to suppress. They're going to crack down. Most likely, they're going to try to cut the media off. And just like they did in 1989 with Tiananmen Square, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be ugly. And it's not going to end anytime soon. So what should you do? Okay, as an investor, you've got to be careful of any global company. Okay, this whole idea of globalism was great, but you got to be careful of any company that has globalism next to their name, or says they're global in nature. You got to buy U.S. small caps, fund or whatever. U.S. small caps, most of them are very domestic orientated. U.S. economy relative to everyone else is doing okay. It's a disaster, but the other places, the UK, Europe, and Asia are worse. So U.S. small caps should actually do okay in this environment. Right now, with the dollar strengthening, everything is going to go down, including gold. But you got to buy gold on weakness. Okay, any kind of weakness, you got to buy gold because that's where all the big money is going. All the money flows around the world going into gold. Do not sell oil like these maniacs are telling you to do. yes, China is a big consumptor of oil, but there's not enough production out there. Okay, and also, you've got to realize that OPEC has their finger, and they're not going to play any games. And with the current administration, so I don't think oil is going to go down as much as people say. So any weakness, I would buy oil stocks. But overall, I mean, folks, the earnings are going to be a disaster. Okay, valuation is too expensive. Any rally should be sold. So I'd be playing this market on rallies on the short side. That's the bottom line. So once again, if you're an investor, be careful out there.